In the previous part, we saw the Greek gods cross over into Rome, change their names and garments, turning from Zeus into Jupiter, from Athena into Minerva, and quietly continuing to live on in a new empire. But there would come a time when even those gods, who had already learned to change clothes, began to fade. Not because they were hacked to pieces on a battlefield, but because in the hearts of human beings, the questions themselves had changed. And that was when philosophy and Christianity stepped together onto the stage, gently but persistently, causing Olympus to slowly go dark. Imagine a late afternoon in Athens, many centuries after the age of Pericles. On the hill of the Acropolis, the Parthenon still stands, its white columns turned honey-colored in the sun. In the courtyard, people still burn incense. Oxen and goats are still led up for sacrifice. Whispered prayers to Athena still drift upward with the smoke. But if we walk down a stone slope, turn into a side street, and sit in a small courtyard under the shade of an olive tree, we will find a different scene. A few young men in cloaks gathered around an old man, talking. They are no longer asking, how do we offer sacrifice properly to the gods? They are asking, what does it mean to live well? What is justice? What is the soul? That old man might be Socrates. He writes no books, builds no temples, founds no sect. He just asks questions. But those questions, repeated over and over again on the streets of Athens, were the first blows against the foundations of Olympus. Socrates does not directly overthrow the gods. He simply asks, if the gods are good, why do they do bad things, as Homer's poems say they do? If justice is something precious, how can we accept stories of gods lying, taking revenge, and flaring up like children? For the ancient Greeks, these were not small questions. Myth was not just entertainment. It was the mirror by which they examined morality, the foundation for ritual, law, and festival. When Socrates asks, he is touching a very deep string in the soul of the society. And the reaction comes quickly. He is accused of corrupting tradition, leading the youth astray, failing to honor the city's gods. In the end, he is sentenced to death by poison. But there are things a sentence cannot kill. Socrates' death is like a crack on a stone statue. From that crack, tiny shoots begin to grow. His student Plato sits down and writes. In the dialogues, he lets Socrates keep talking. This time not on the street, but on the pages, living longer than any temple. Plato looks up at Olympus and says something gentle but deep. If the gods are truly perfect, then surely the stories we tell about them can only be allegories. Tales of jealous, unfaithful, drunken, brawling gods cannot be the true portrait of the sacred. So what is myth? Perhaps it is an outer shell for moral and metaphysical truths, deeper within. The very things philosophy will try to touch. Thus, in the quiet space of the academy, Plato begins a very important work. He moves the gods from the sky into the realm of ideas. Zeus is no longer just an old bearded man holding a thunderbolt, but can be understood as the idea of order and justice. Athena is no longer only a goddess with spear and shield, but the symbol of wisdom, of a reason guiding action. When gods become symbols, people begin to fear them less and think about them more. From then on, Olympus becomes a little less fearsome and a little more worthy of reflection. Aristotle, Plato's student, walks a bit further down that path. He no longer sees the world as a stage for angry gods, but as an order that can be understood with causes, purposes, and laws. Instead of saying, "Lightning is Zeus in a rage," he asks, "How do clouds form? How is electricity discharged?" Instead of saying, "A person was born to be miserable because the gods punished him," he asks, "How did character, choices, and environment weave together to create that tragedy?" Philosophy is like a new kind of wind, one that does not topple Olympus by violence, but does something subtler. It gradually replaces gods with reason, fear with understanding. For ordinary people, sacrifices and prayers remain unchanged. But in the minds of the educated, Olympus has begun to shift shape. The gods are no longer real people doing real things in the clouds, but shadows of laws, values, and aspirations. Then come the ages of other philosophical schools. Xenophanes smiles wryly. "If cows could paint," he says, "they would probably paint gods that look like cows." The remark sounds like a joke, but it hits a weak spot. Are we creating gods in our own image? If so, are the gods eternal, or are they merely magnified mirrors of human desires and fears? Epicurus goes farther. He does not deny the gods, but he says, if the gods are truly perfect, they will not bother with our little affairs. Punishments, thunderbolts, divine rage, those are our projections. Fear of divine punishment is a useless burden. Let us live simply, know what is enough, treat each other kindly, and worry less about the afterlife. For perhaps the gods are very far away, silent, and do not intervene. The Stoics paint a different picture. They say, the universe is full of God, but God is not an old man sitting on a cloud. It is a logos, a cosmic reason, flowing through everything. To live well is not to please Zeus through sacrifices, but to live in accordance with nature, with the deepest order of the universe. Patience, acceptance, keeping the mind calm in the face of loss. That is how one honors the divine. Olympus, in the Stoic view, is no longer a mountain in Greece, but the universe itself, and each human being who lives upright is a tiny part of the divine. Philosophy does not burn down the temples. It simply makes those who walk into them start to ask, am I kneeling here out of fear, out of habit, or because I truly believe? And that question, repeated across generations, gradually thins the spiritual foundations of old Olympus, much as stone steps are worn away by feet and wind. Meanwhile, Rome has become an empire encircling the Mediterranean. The gods under Roman names, Jupiter, Juno, Minerva, Mars, Venus, are enshrined everywhere. Temples rise in every city. Sacrifices are held on a strict calendar. State religion becomes part of the political order. But right in the heart of Rome, Greek philosophy is regarded as the highest form of education. A Roman senator may offer incense to Jupiter by day, then go home at night and open Plato or Aristotle, reading about the soul and a highest good beyond any particular god. In the space between ritual and reasoning, Olympus begins to hollow out. For many people, the gods remain ritual, tradition, public ceremony. But the burning conviction that the gods truly intervene, that they really save this person and punish that one, slowly fades. The gods become symbols of the state, subjects for art, figures for poetry. They are everywhere, but more like beautiful marble statues than living characters. And it is precisely then that, from a small corner of the empire, Judea, a tiny land full of unrest and resistance, another story appears. A carpenter, a circle of disciples, a death on a cross, a rumor of resurrection. At first, it is only the story of a very small community, even persecuted. But what they teach has something different from the old mythic world. If Olympus tells stories about powerful gods, quick to anger, quick to jealousy, fond of sacrifice, then Christianity tells of a single God, invisible, yet caring for each small human being. If Zeus uses thunderbolts to punish, the God of the Christians uses the cross to speak of forgiveness and sacrifice. If in Greek myth the heroes are God-born and thus greater than ordinary people, then in Christianity the ones highlighted are the weak, the poor, the sick, children, slaves, abandoned women. In a vast empire full of injustice, war, slavery, and plague, that message touched weary hearts. For a Roman slave, Jupiter is too far away, too closely tied to his master and the emperor. But a God who says, "In my eyes everyone is a child," is a different promise, a different comfort. In the army camps, in poor neighborhoods, in underground burial chambers, the catacombs, small Christian communities slowly take shape. They gather not to sacrifice oxen and goats, but to share a meal of bread and wine, to listen to letters read aloud that speak of love, patience, hope, to share with one another in times of hunger and sickness. In those little rooms, Olympus begins to lose something no stone temple can replace: intimacy. With the Greek-Roman gods, people stand at a distance, offer gifts, and hope for favor. With the Lord of the Christians, people say, Father, Son, sharing their fears, their faults, their dreams. The first person to recognize the political power of this new faith is an emperor, Constantine. Before an important battle, he believes he sees a cross in the sky, and he hears the words, "By this sign you will conquer." He orders that symbol painted on the standards, and after victory, he issues an edict of tolerance for Christians. From a forbidden religion, Christianity becomes allowed, then gradually favored. Yet the interesting thing is this: as Christianity grows, it does not discard all of the Greek heritage. The Church Fathers themselves study Plato and Aristotle, using the concept of logos, originally from Greek philosophy and the Stoics, to explain the Word of God. They take the language, concepts, and modes of Greek thought to tell a new story. Philosophy weakened Olympus, but also provided the intellectual tools through which the new religion could explain itself. In those centuries, Rome slowly changes its face. The temple of Jupiter still stands, but on doorposts people begin to draw the sign of the cross. An official may attend sacrifices according to state ritual, then pray in silence at night to an invisible god. The two worlds overlap like two layers of one mind. There is no single day or hour when Olympus is overthrown. Instead, there is a very long process. The temple still stands, but fewer people come. The rituals continue, but the heart's trust has turned elsewhere. Eventually, the government follows the people's hearts. Emperor Theodosius III, at the end of the 4th century, issues decrees banning sacrifices, closing pagan temples, and forbidding the old rites. The ancient Olympic Games, once a festival dedicated to Zeus, are also suspended. For many people living at that time, it must have been a shock. An old man who has spent his whole life offering sacrifices to Jupiter now sees the temple sealed, the statue pulled down. He would feel as we might feel seeing a familiar pagoda or church abandoned. But seen from the long view of time, those edicts are only the punctuation mark at the end of a story already nearly finished. Olympus did not collapse in a single night. It had been dimming from within, through philosophy, through art, through sheer familiarity. The gods gradually became literary characters, subjects of painting, decorative statuary, Christianity simply stepped into that empty space and laid upon it a new language for the sacred. So what lesson lies here? First, it is a lesson about the impermanence even of what seems most eternal. For the ancient Greeks, imagining a day without Zeus, without Athena worshipped, was probably as difficult as it is for us to imagine a day without government buildings, flags, or familiar currencies. Yet history shows every system of belief, whether myth, philosophy, or religion, has its cycle. It is born, grows, is questioned, is transformed, then either disappears or dissolves into something else. Second, it is a lesson about how humans are always searching for a deeper voice for their fears and hopes. When we live in small tribes, we need stories of thunder gods and sea gods to explain our fear of nature. When city-states grow, we need stories of heroes, of justice, of gods who protect the city. When the empire spreads, philosophy appears to teach us to live as citizens of the cosmos. When the empire rots, when war, plague, and injustice spread, a religion that speaks of love, forgiveness, and salvation appears to support exhausted hearts. Each layer does not completely erase the previous one, but overlays it, absorbs it, transforms it. Third, if we look back, we will see that philosophy and Christianity are not just enemies of Olympus. They are different mirrors that humans use to see themselves. Philosophy asks, if the gods were gone, how would you live rightly? Christianity asks, if there were a love greater than all laws, how far would you dare to forgive and be forgiven? Olympus asks, if life is a beautiful tragedy, do you dare to live fully and take responsibility for your choices? Perhaps the saddest thing is not that a system of belief declines, but that people might lose the ability to ask such questions at all. Olympus declines, but the questions about fate, justice, and death remain. Philosophy grows skeptical, but the question about the meaning of life remains. Christianity rises, but questions about freedom and personal responsibility cling on. One era passes, another comes. Only the questions stay. In our personal lives, we too have our own Olympus. It might be the image of an ideal career, a political ideology, an idol, a value system we once believed in absolutely. Then time, experience, failure, personal philosophy, and our own private religion step in, challenge, overturn, and change it. There will be moments when we feel a part of ourselves is in decline. Things once sacred suddenly no longer feel absolute. When that happens, we can learn from the Greeks and Romans. Do not only grieve or resent. Look at what those old gods within you have taught you. Olympus taught the Greeks about tragedy, about the beauty of finitude, about courage in facing fate. Philosophy taught them to ask questions, not to deify violence. Christianity taught them about compassion, about the worth of each small person. All of these are classrooms of the soul. What matters is not which wins, but whether after passing through them, our hearts become wider, deeper, and kinder. Today, when we read Greek myth, we no longer kneel before Zeus, but we are still moved by Achilles' choices, Antigone's courage, Prometheus' daring, Hades' loneliness, Demeter's waiting. When we read philosophy, we do not perform sacrifices to Plato or Aristotle, but we still feel them pulling us away from the surface of life, forcing us to ask how we are living. When we listen to church music or read a story about forgiveness, we do not have to become believers, yet we can still feel the power of mercy. Olympus faded before philosophy and Christianity, but in another sense it only withdrew into a deeper layer of our imagination. From there, the gods continue to live. Not on a real mountain, but in stories, paintings, plays, dreams, and the questions we ask ourselves. And who knows, tonight, when you turn off the lights and close your eyes, you may still hear, very faintly, on a mist-covered mountain peak, the murmurs of the old gods, blending with the debates of philosophers and the quiet hymns of the first believers in the catacombs. All of them are telling the same story, that human beings are always seeking meaning in a vast universe, and that every god, every philosophy, every religion is, in the end, just a different way for us to learn how to face time, loss, and death, with more calm, more kindness, and perhaps a gentler heart toward ourselves. In the next part of this sleep-inducing journey through history, we will not stop at decline, but will look instead at how, after Olympus's fire went out in the sky of belief, the gods lit up again in art, in science, in literature, in psychology, and in modern culture, as small, quiet lamps that have never entirely gone out.